Dark Blue, one of the many, many dirty cop movies that came out in the early 2000s after Training Day. Now, Training Day was a big hit that won Denzel Washington his first Oscar. And there were a lot of movies that imitated it, but this one's different. It has a riot.
In America, the police are sworn to uphold the law and protect the innocent. But on the streets, it's everyone for themselves.
Yeah, with everyone talking about all the rioting across the country, I thought I'd watch a movie with a riot in it. And Dark Blue immediately came to mind. It's probably the best movie that has a riot in it with, some people would probably say Do the Right Thing, and there's probably a ton of stuff I'm forgetting. But Dark Blue is always what I think of when I think of movies with massive riots in it. Mostly because it's about the Rodney King riots, and I had a family member that was injured during the Rodney King riots. This is a really good movie. This is an outstanding movie, actually. I like it more than Training Day. I would say it's one of Kurt Russell, who stars in it. It's honestly probably his best performance from an acting perspective. Kurt Russell, he does a lot of comedy, he does a lot of action, but he doesn't actually do that much drama. And this is an opportunity for him to really do drama. Not to say there's not action in this movie. There is a good deal of action in this movie, but he does a lot more acting here. He has a lot more range here. He has to display a lot more emotion here than he normally does. That's great. He plays a character named Eldon Perry, who's a very corrupt cop. Again, after Training Day, basically every cop movie was a dirty cop movie. And quite a few of them were either written by or written and directed by David Ayer. Now, David Ayer has become a much bigger name in Hollywood since Suicide Squad, but at this time he was still pretty much just a screenwriter. He hadn't directed his first movie. The first movie that he directed was Harsh Times with Christian Bale, which is a good movie. It's not about dirty cops, even though it was marketed as being about dirty cops, which is probably why it didn't do very well at the box office, but it is a good movie. But yeah, he wrote Training Day, he wrote Dark Blue, and he wrote the first Fast and the Furious movie. I don't know if he had anything to do with the sequels, but yeah, he did a lot of LA crime stuff. And Dark Blue is actually based on a treatment by James Ellroy, who is my favorite author. I love James Ellroy. James Ellroy wrote LA Confidential, The Black Dahlia, American Tabloid, The Cold 6000, The Big Nowhere, White Jazz. He wrote a lot of fantastic books, Brown's Requiem. And he wrote a story, because almost everything Ellroy has written has been set in the past. He almost exclusively writes period pieces, with the exception, I think, of a few of his first novels. But this was supposed to take place during the Watts riots, which were large race riots in, I believe, the 1960s in LA. But for budgetary reasons, he was convinced to update it to the early 90s. Now, this movie was released, I believe, in 2001, I think it was 2001. So it was still a period film, but it was only going 10 years back, so it wasn't a dramatic difference. And yeah, it takes place against the backdrop of the Rodney King trial, the trial of the cops that got into the scuffle with Rodney King after a traffic stop went bad. And Eldon Perry, Kurt Russell's character, is investigating a brutal series of murders during what should have been a routine convenience store robbery. And we see it, and it is honestly one of the most harsh robberies ever. Like, the guys this isn't a whodunit. We know who killed these people right off the bat. There's the two characters named Orchard and Sidwell, played by a rapper named Corrupt. I don't know anything about the guy because I don't listen to rap. And Dash Mihawk, who is the dumbest brother on Ray Donovan. He's the big kind of dumb guy. And they play Orchard and Sidwell, and they go into this convenience store, and it is brutal. Like, it's like, damn, dude, you couldn't have just like hit these people over the head or something. Just straight up execution after execution. It is harsh. And Kurt Russell's character and his partner, who's played by Scott Speedman. Scott Speedman is probably best known for appearing in the first couple seasons of Animal Kingdom as the brother that wasn't related to Ellen Barkin's character by blood. He was the one, I think he was also the oldest. And also for the Underworld movies, he was Kate Beckinsale's love interest in most of those movies. I kind of dropped off on that series, but I don't remember if he was in the last couple. But I know he was a major part of the first two. So his partner, Scott Speedman, a guy named Bobby, and Eldon and Bobby are investigating this essentially a mass murder. And they're trying to piece it together while there's just this constant tension all around them. They're in LA, they're in the heart of it, the trial's going. A verdict's expected any day, and Kurt Russell's character flat out says that if those guys go free, this city burns. So he knows what's coming. And that's basically the story. Is they're just trying to solve this very violent crime that ultimately involves police corruption. And like Kurt Russell's character is corrupt in the beat a suspect, lie on a report kind of way. He's not a straight up criminal. He's not a good cop, but he's one of those guys who would argue that he's breaking the law to maintain the law. He's not like Denzel Washington's character in Training Day, where he's just a criminal with a badge. I mean, you could argue he is a criminal with a badge, but he's not doing that kind of thing. Like, he's not selling drugs. He's not stealing from citizens. He's just massively abusing his power. And Kurt Russell is great in this role. See, the thing about Kurt Russell playing a bad guy is that, they say very few people, if anybody, thinks of themselves as the villain in their own story. And Kurt Russell's great at understanding that. If you look at Death Proof, that's what was so fantastic about his performance in Death Proof, is Stuntman Mike, the Quentin Tarantino movie, the half of Grindhouse. He doesn't play Stuntman Mike like a guy who knows he's evil. He plays Stuntman Mike like he thinks all this is a big, funny-ass game. And that's kind of how he plays this, too, is he plays this guy like a guy who is just drunk with his own power. And he's dragging his partner along with him. Now, this is a fairly typical setup for dirty cop movies. If you have the older cop who breaks all kinds of rules, and then you have the younger cop who's kind of trailing along behind him. Training Day did this, obviously. Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke. Street Kings, Keanu Reeves and Chris Evans. Narc, Ray Liotta and Jason Patric. Narc's a fantastic movie. I actually also like it more than Training Day. So this was a pretty common formula. And Training Day didn't invent it, but Training Day definitely popularized it. So yeah, I think this is definitely worth watching, if just for the Kurt Russell, because he is just, I can't say it enough how great he is, but the story's really good too. And the riot at the end, I mean, you just have to picture a white cop in downtown LA as the Rodney King riots break out. It is intense, it's well shot, you feel the tension and the paranoia of what's going on. And they shoot it very well. Now, I would argue that this movie's director, Ron Shelton, was not the right director for the thing, and he stumbles quite a bit in the movie. The reason this movie's not like A+ material, the reason that everyone didn't see this movie is because Ron Shelton wasn't really the right guy to direct it. He does some things very well. One of the things he does best is he does a really good job of showing us versus them, which is obviously Eldon's mindset, the Kurt Russell character. That he sees the cops as being on one side and the primarily black population of the neighborhoods he patrols on the other side.
An elite unit in the LAPD.
SIS doesn't have a jail, so if you knock one down, make sure he stays down.
This is really well illustrated in one scene where he walks out of a store and he sees a group of black guys listening to rap music on a loud stereo across the street, and he just looks at them with such disdain. It's clear that he's just thinking, I want to arrest every one of you sons of... Yeah, like he doesn't even know, like obviously there's no proof of criminal activity or anything. He just sees them and doesn't like them. Yeah, the robbery scene at the beginning is extremely well shot. But then there are other parts of the movie that aren't... the movie tends to be long-winded. Characters talk for way too long. It's kind of overwritten in that respect. There's several times where scenes just go on for a couple minutes longer than they should. Also, Ron Shelton kind of struggles when you just have two characters talking to each other. He seems to not know where to put the camera, and you end up with these kind of bland one-to-one shots, and yeah, that's unfortunate. Also, he's not necessarily giving all of his actors the best direction. So basically, an actor's either good or they're not. Like, Kurt Russell's fantastic. He's great in everything, but this is a role that really required him to challenge himself. Lolita Davidovich, as good as his wife. The two criminals, Dash Mihawk and Corrupt's characters, they're very good. But then, Ving Rhames, he's kind of miscast, honestly, and he's leaning too hard into the... He's so righteous, he seems self-righteous, and he's kind of unlikable for that. And given that he's kind of supposed to be this moral bastion in the film, you just end up not really liking the guy, as opposed to, say, Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad, Hank, he's also on Better Call Saul, but, that guy, the old guy, the straight-up killer from Breaking Bad. He's in this, and he's very good in it. But then Scott Speedman and Michael Michelle as his love interest, who is a female cop who works for Ving Rhames. They're not very good either. And I would actually say that Scott Speedman, I've never really seen him do particularly well in anything. He's, I mean, not to be overly mean, but the guy seems to me like the male equivalent of a pretty face. He's just good looking. He doesn't bring much to roles. He's always, you kind of forget he's in a movie as you're watching the movie. Like Underworld, no one thinks of Underworld as a Scott Speedman movie. No one. Kate Beckinsale, Bill Nighy, they're the people that you remember from that movie, even though Scott Speedman probably had almost as much screen time as Kate Beckinsale did in it. He's kind of a blah actor, and he's not bringing much to this role either. He's just a good looking guy with a nice haircut. Michael Michelle, she just kind of seems stiff and unpleasant. You don't really like her at all. So like I said, and again, Ving Rhames, he seems kind of miscast. Ving Rhames is better at being forceful than being righteous. Ving Rhames, all his most popular performances, you look at Pulp Fiction, you look at Con Air, you look at Don King, Only in America, Undisputed, which I think is a very underappreciated movie. He's always a very forceful, intimidating character, but when you try to put him as this righteous, this role almost feels like might have been written for someone like Morgan Freeman or Denzel Washington. It feels more like this guy's supposed to be constantly telling people the right way to do things and how to do things and what's right and wrong. He's not really landing it. Brendan Gleeson, he's good in it as Kurt Russell's boss. He kind of struggles with the American accent a little bit. Brendan Gleeson's British, and he does this thing that you notice with British actors. Once you notice it with British actors, you kind of can't unnotice it, is that a lot of times they hide their British accent by rolling. They tend to kind of roll their R's and stuff. So they kind of can't stop doing that. So they unintentionally elongate their words in a weird way. So he's good in it once you get past the fact that he's just tripping over his American accent a bit. But yeah, I like this a lot. I think it's a good movie, and I think it's a timely movie. It's something that can definitely be watched today, and you can get a lot out of it. It's a dark movie. Dark Blue is right there in the title. Now, there was actually a TV show called Dark Blue about dirty cops also that only lasted for one season. But Dark Blue is a good title for a dirty cop movie. And this is a really good movie. It's got a lot of conspiracy elements. Like I said, it's got some good action, some great acting. It's not quite perfect. There are definitely flaws. But overall, I do really enjoy this movie. And I think it's one that deserves a lot more attention than it gets. It's kind of a hidden gem from the 2000s. It was released a little too soon after Training Day, and everyone just kind of said, Training Day ripoff. Which, this movie was definitely made because Training Day was a hit. You can't deny that, but it's not a Training Day ripoff. It's actually really nothing like Training Day. It's outside of the fact that you have the two cops, and one of them's corrupt and older, and one of them's younger and not corrupt. Although he's being corrupted. That's kind of Scott Speedman's character's arc, is that he's learning the wrong way to be a cop from Kurt Russell's Eldon character. So, yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of spoiler stuff, so spoilers from here on out. Spoilers. So yeah, the cool thing about this movie is you're kind of looking at the way Kurt Russell has the system played. And there's this one great sequence where he kind of shows how he gets arrest warrants for nothing. Like he gets a judge that's just drunk, and he goes to the judge and gets him to sign it, and the judge is basically like, okay, whatever. It shows how he kind of frames these two guys for murder because his boss orders him to. It shows him lie to a shooting review board. Cops have to do shooting review boards after they shoot somebody to determine whether or not it was in policy. And, he lies to a shooting review board, and just all the little ways that he has of playing the system. He's kind of learned the ins and outs of it. At one point, he rolls up on this guy played by Master P, that old rapper, and a cameo. And he kind of says, "Hey, you just shot my car." And the guy's like, "I didn't shoot your car." And he says, "Look right there." The guy leans over, so he's kind of out of view. Then he pepper sprays him right in the face. And apparently, people that were watching this didn't see the cameras and thought this was really happening and started yelling at him. They thought that the cops were just like brutalizing this guy on the street. But yeah, all that stuff, and then Scott Speedman's character Bobby, the way he's kind of horrified by this behavior, but you see the club, the kind of nature of this, the way that the Jonathan Banks character, who is the highest ranking of them, and then Brendan Gleeson, who's next, and Kurt Russell, who's next, and Scott Speedman, who's at the bottom. The way he's just kind of following the older guy's example, and he's kind of scared to speak up about it until he's forced to do something so against his morals that he can't not speak up about it. So that was, it's an interesting character development. I just didn't think the actor quite landed it. And yeah, his relationship with Michael and Michelle, mostly because I didn't like her in the movie, just was a time killer. I didn't like any of their scenes together. Except for his, well, that's kind of a big spoiler. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about this other than it's a good movie. And yeah, I think it's one of the better cop movies, period. It's definitely up there with stuff like Training Day. Better known movies like Training Day or End of Watch or Seven, French Connection, all the class, Serpico, all the classics. I think this is up there with it. It's got a couple little flaws, but it's a great movie.
I was raised up to be a gunfighter by a family of gunfighters.